New Zealand went from an 11, I think it's 11.6% smoking rate down to a 6.8% smoking rate as of November 2024. So from 2020 to 2024, which is a really big drop. CAFRA is the Coalition of Asia Pacific Tobacco Harm Reduction Advocates. Tobacco harm reduction is a holistic and a supportive way of saying, listen, okay, yeah, you like nicotine. Okay, there's a better way to get it because the cigarette is the dirtiest delivery system there is. Nicotine is not the problem. Tobacco harm reduction promotes, I guess, or supports, I should say supports, that nicotine is not the problem. It's the delivery method that's the problem. When we talk about tobacco harm reduction, we're talking about the concept of reducing harm from risky behavior. And this is a concept that is entrenched in the UN human rights, and it's also entrenched in the Framework Convention of Tobacco Control Treaty, okay? Reducing harm, mitigating risk. Now, as I've said, it's something that's prevalent in drugs harm now. I mean, it took them years to get that accepted. It's prevalent in sexual health. It's prevalent in, you wearing a helmet, when you're riding a motorcycle, or seatbelt when you're driving a car. Okay, harm reduction is there in our lives everywhere. Tobacco harm reduction is a holistic and a supportive way of saying, listen, okay, yeah, you like nicotine. Okay, there's a better way to get it because the cigarette is the dirtiest delivery system there is. Next to that is unsafe oral, stuff that's made with slaked lime. Nicotine is not the problem. Tobacco harm reduction promotes, I guess, or supports, I should say supports, that nicotine is not the problem. It's the delivery method that's the problem. Going back to, if nicotine was the problem, then why is it available over the counter in some countries as patches and gum and lollies and inhalers and mists? And also, why is it being utilized to help people with, neurodegenerative diseases? CAFRA is the Coalition of Asia Pacific Tobacco Harm Reduction Advocates. It's a grassroots coalition of 11 consumer advocacy organizations in the Asia Pacific region. The benefit of CAFRA is what we do is we inform people of what's going on in Asia Pacific as well as outside of our region, just like scientific information or regulatory information. We educate people. So we help the advocates themselves when they're out in the street, out in the real world, to be able to have conversations with people on what is tobacco harm reduction, what is vaping, why is vaping better than smoking, and to inform, public health and government officials about what we're doing and why we do it. And a lot of times, I have to be honest, we are the people that are informing the government and the public health people who are willing to listen. Because a lot of people have absolutely no idea what any of this is. They only see what they see in the media. And as you are probably well aware, a lot of that is negative and it's very one-sided. So that's what CAFRA is, and that's what CAFRA does. My journey to smoke-free via vaping started back in 2007. I was still living in the United States. I was about to emigrate to New Zealand. And my brother handed me a little cig-alike. And I used that. But then once I got to New Zealand, it was very difficult to find any kind of vaping product. So everything had to be bought online. And that really, if I think about it, there was one online group. And that was where everything started, because that was a group of people that were trying to find the stuff that they needed to stay smoke-free. Keeping in mind here, in New Zealand at least, you can, a 12-year-old can be prescribed nicotine replacement therapy. If nicotine was so bad, How come you can buy it over the counter in the supermarket? When it comes to New Zealand, I want to start at the beginning so I can kind of give a progression, because it wasn't something that happened overnight. Okay, there were multiple people working on trying to bring vaping into the country. Originally, there was a group of scientists and doctors called End Smoking New Zealand, and they were the ones who originally started this, who originally had the information about, hey, we need to do this. We need to do this to help people to quit smoking. AVCA, which at the time, it still exists, AVCA, Aotearoa Vapers Community Advocacy, that is. We started out as a group of 4 of us who had found vaping on our own. Different backgrounds, different, we all got together and said, hey, listen, this thing worked for us. We need to have this out there for other people. So we started a community group. What we did is we built a community. And in building that community, we also, the people that were part of it, they were able to help people who smoked make the transition. We had a program called Vape It Forward. And what we did is we took all of the equipment that any of us had, like if we upgraded or whatever. And if somebody said, hey, listen, I'm interested, I want to make the switch, they'd get a mentor. And that person, whoever their mentor was, would stay with them for however long it took to help them make that transition. So basically think of it as a buddy system. I had about 5 people that I was mentoring, and they'd call me, at 10 o'clock at night or message me at 10 o'clock at night and go, oh, this tastes really bad. And it would be something like they burnt the coil, things like that. All of those quirks that a lot of people in the real world, they try it and they go, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. We didn't have that because you had somebody you could call. We spent a lot of time trying to help people to understand that, hey, listen, this worked for us. We have a very high smoking rate among our Indigenous people. And we also have a goal of getting the smoking rate down to 5% or less by 2025. This is how we can do this. We don't necessarily, everybody says we lobby, but we don't really lobby per se. We're not like paid lobbyists to go into governments. But the way we approach it, again, educate and inform. So we're talking 2016, meeting with government officials, talking to doctors, educating people. We would have stacks of science that we would bring to meetings in government and say, hey, listen, they'd be like, oh, but nicotine's carcinogenic. It's like, no, it's not. So we spent a lot of time educating the government. So it was a long, slow process. Now, as many people know, we do have a regulated consumer market. And there are tweaks being done to that regulation based on various issues that have come up. For example, there were at the time, when somebody went to apply to get a vape shop license, there was no consideration made as to whether it was near a school or the density of the vape shops. The enforcement of the R18 age limits that were happening. This was mainly in the general retailers. It wasn't the specialist vape shops. So they are making little changes here and there to try to tighten that up and also to increase the enforcement. That being said, New Zealand went from an 11.6% smoking rate down to a 6.8% smoking rate as of November 2024. So from 2020 to 2024, which is a really big drop. It's basic supply and demand. If people want something, you can regulate it and you can provide it on the market and maybe make a little coin in the process, as long as it's risk proportionate. Or you can ban it completely, such as they've done in let's say India, okay? Another place, complete black market. Meanwhile, and you and I both know this, and most people do know this, and if they don't, they should, the majority of tobacco-related death and disease is India and China. 2 countries with bans and huge black markets. In Australia, their smoking rate has tanked. It's going like this because there's no incentive for them not to smoke. And the regulatory frameworks that they're implementing, it's almost as if to say, keep smoking, we need the money. It's interesting across Asia Pacific because you have the Philippines and you have New Zealand, Indonesia, Malaysia, let's just say, that have some form of a regulatory framework, okay? You've got Thailand and India where there's a ban, okay? Then you've got Pakistan, which really doesn't have much regulation, although they're talking about regulating. And then you've got Vietnam, which has no regulation, and they've banned it in the past week.
Thank you for watching the full video. आप में से बहुत से ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्होंने शायद हमारा YouTube channel subscribe नहीं किया. So if you want to support independent journalism and watch more meaningful content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.